I'm going to show you an absolutely brilliant attacking game played with the Sicilian Kalashnikov. As many of you know, I wrote a book on this opening, there you go, and also a chessable course. Coincidentally, it's on sale right now for another 24 hours. Get it while you can. So I'm always on the lookout for interesting games, for recent games with the opening, and this one that I've just spotted this afternoon absolutely blew me away because there are so many thematic Kalashnikov themes in there. There's the Trojan horse, the Harry attack, the poke, the steamroller, and thinking about the steamroller, many of you will know a classic game from the 19th century, MacDonald against Labordone, where black ended up with 3 pawns on the second row. Something really similar happens in this game. I'm not joking. Let's dive in. So this was played yesterday on the 9th of January in Chennai. It's the Tamil Nadu circuit, and we have Mr. Raghav playing with white and Buscara playing with black. 7. Buscara is apparently a French international master. I didn't know, I haven't heard of him before, but well, I'm going to be looking out for his Kalashnikov games in the future because he plays this one magnificently. D4, so it's an open Sicilian. If you're interested in the closed variations, then I've done a chessable course on that as well. It's also on sale at the moment. Okay, enough of the adverts. So, open Sicilian and E5. And here white has a big choice. But these moves like knight F5, knight C6, none of these really challenge black. They're easy. The only move that really puts black under pressure is knight B5. So the knight wants to hop in. And after D6, this is the starting position of the Kalashnikov variation. Knight C3 is the main line, or one of the main lines. Looks very sensible, bring your knight into the middle. But after A6, black is able to push that knight into the corner. And already we've got, because of that, we have quite an unbalanced position. I think that's already an achievement for black. In the book and in my course, I recommend bishop E7. And, well, I think this is a very reliable way of playing. But there are other ways you can play this position. And B5, which was played by Buscara here, this is the old main line. But this is also very interesting and leads to very unclear positions. B4 threatened. So white should play knight D5. And then knight G5 challenges the knight in the middle. And the main line here is C4 and gets really complicated. But white, after some thought, played G3. Now, I think it's very reasonable for black simply to exchange here and put the knight on E7 and then, for example, play G6 and bishop G7. I quite like this pawn structure where you have 4 against 3 pawns here on the king side, because I think black can push those pawns and get control in the middle and some attacking chances. I think that's a very reasonable way to play. But Buscara played a really interesting move here, which is very typical of the Kalashnikov, actually. The good old Harry attack. The H-pawn steams down the board, and actually black can get away with this. It's not so silly. Let me compare with the line that I recommend in my course, which is bishop E7, B5, knight F6, and here G3 is the most popular move, and then H5. And there are great similarities, and this challenges white straight away. You know, should you play H3? Should you play H4? Should you ignore this pawn altogether? It's not so simple. And it's exactly the same in this game. White has to decide, should I block the pawn? But if you block the pawn, then the bishop has a square on G4. If you play h3, well, that could leave this square weakened. So for example, in this kind of position, the knight might swing around to g6 and later be able to look in here to f4. Or do you just ignore that pawn? And after 16 minutes thought, White did just that. He just developed the bishop. And I think just seeing, this is a classical game, and seeing the clock times here, I think this shows that it's worth playing a move like this. Actually, it's a very sound move. But you can see how it challenges your opponent. You know, he's already in a dilemma what to do about that pawn. So black exchanged on d5. And then played knight d4. So it's a Trojan horse. There we go. The knight flings itself into the middle of the board. Of course, it could just be pushed away. But that knight's not going away. And as we'll see in our game as well, this didn't happen. Instead, White simply castles. And now we have another theme that I write about in the book and the course. Bishop g4. This is what I call the poke. This poke is really annoying. What do you do if you're White about the threat to the queen? Well, if the queen moves up, well, that just loses material. If it goes to d2, also not great. You could play knight check, but in fact in this position, simply attacking with the h-pawn is incredibly powerful. That's almost lost, probably is lost already. So White has to play f3, but this is obviously undesirable because it blocks out the bishop, but also opens up that diagonal. So it's one more attacking avenue that White has to be concerned about. The bishop drops back, but it's done a good job. It also stands pretty well on d7. We've managed to induce f3, so very nicely played by Buscara so far. Rook e1. Well, that looks at black's king in the middle. And obviously this could be a concern for black. You haven't castled, the king's in the middle. However, black can get away with this because this is a pretty solid structure. Knight f5. So this prevents the bishop moving to e3 and sets up some interesting ideas on the king side, as we're about to see. Queen e2. Okay, it's not exactly clear to me what White is doing here, but in any case, let's see black's plan. h4. Of course, black wants to open up the h-file, so White should close that. But here's the idea. h3, you flick in this move. Of course, if pawn takes knight, pawn takes bishop, the h-file is opening. This looks really nice. You're going to recapture here. So the bishop retreated to f1, not a beautiful square. Knight h4, so there we go. This knight has hopped all the way round through the middle and finds itself in a really menacing position on the king side. Really nice. Okay, what about bishop takes pawn? This wasn't played, but it's incredibly risky because the h-file opens. So for example, bishop e7, there's no need to rush things. This is very nice. Knight g6, threatening the bishop. Bishop goes back. Okay, let's just play king f8. And then let's bring the king out of trouble on the e-file. And on the next turn, you can play bishop g5. And once those bishops are exchanged, then the knight will be free to come into f4. I think you can see then in combination with the rook and the queen, that knight on f4, it's just a fantastic position for black. In fact, this is another classic Kalashnikov theme, the breakout bishop. Bishop coming to g5, and often that exchange just weakens so many dark squares around the king. However, White did not take on h3, but played instead queen f2. Bishop e7, yeah, time to develop, and it could be that black wants to play bishop g5, given a chance. But there's also something else that's going on. c4, well, finally, White attempts to get some counterplay going on the queen side, but it is too little too late. Bishop g5 is possible, but f5. There's no need to mess around here. White is so weak on the king side, it's possible just to attack down the f file. So for example, if g takes f5, bishop takes f5, and then black can simply castle and a rook on f8, well, you can see that that bishop, pawn on f3 rather, is so vulnerable, and white's king is so exposed. It looks fantastic for black. Therefore, after f5, white decided, okay, no matter what the cost, I've got to keep the f-file closed. But that was a free pawn. Thank you very much. Ah, that's the idea. f4. It's trying to somehow exploit the pin on the f-file, on the e-file. My goodness. I'm losing the plot already. Bishop f6. It's no big deal. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop e3. Okay, finally white is developing the queen side. Castle's king side. This is very cool, because you can see black has these pawns. This is the steamroller. Wants to just push those pawns down the board, and in that case we shouldn't have the king on e8, we should have the king at the side. So the rook comes into the perfect position on the f-file to support those pawns. If bishop takes pawn, f4, the pawns just get going, doesn't make any difference. White played bishop b6, attacking the queen. Queen e8, c5. Uh-oh, counterplay. Okay, white has the same. But the problem is that at the end of these pawns, basically there's an exposed king. That is the problem. And these pawns, they're just not as powerful. Let's see how it happens. f4. So that opens the window for the bishop. That's good. And starts stomping down the board. Bishop d3. Trying to stop this pawn advancing. Queen h5. Right, the queen gets in the danger zone around the king. Very nice. Bishop e4. Okay, black needs to remove that bishop, so we can do that very simply with bishop f5. Takes, queen takes, d6. So white is attempting to get to counterplay, but really compare the two pawns here. A classic Kalashnikov steamroller with these two pawns in the middle. Rook d1, e3. Queen is pushed out of the way. f3. So remember that game McDonald against Labodone? There are great similarities. If queen takes pawn, then the queen just breaks through. And, well, that mate follows shortly. Oh, that's a deadly pin. So queen c2. I'm just going to roll to the end of the game now, because this is so beautiful. Queen g4. King in the corner. Queen g2. Has to be taken. H takes g2, and there we go. The final move. Pawn to f2, checkmate. Now he didn't quite get the 3 pawns on the second rank, but pretty good stuff. Beautiful fine position. And Mr. Raghav, playing with the white pieces, take a bow. What a gentleman. Allowing his opponent to checkmate him. Very generous. I always like it when players go to mate. So Mr. Raghav, take a bow. Great stuff. And thunderous applause to International Master Sevan Buscara for playing such a splendid game. Now, if you're interested in the Kalashnikov, you can get my book from New in Chess, but also the online course for Chessable. Full repertoire for black with the Kalashnikov is on sale for another 24 hours. Do grab it while it's a bargain. You can either get the repertoire, just the repertoire with annotations, or you can also buy the videos, the explanatory videos by yours truly on top of that. So there are 2 different ways you can buy it. So it's on sale for another 24 hours. Also, if you're interested in the anti-Sicilians, basically everything where white doesn't play d4, then I've done a course for Chessable with that as well. Oh, and don't forget something else. I'm doing a live broadcast on Friday afternoon interviewing Davorin Kulyasevich on his new book on the world champion Ding Liren. So do join us, 4 p.m. UK. I'll put the link down in the comments. So live broadcast, and you can ask him anything, you can ask me anything. Do join us for that one as well. Thank you for watching.